Okay, I will open the Cumberland Planning Commission meeting, of Wednesday, August 26th. Whoever calls the order, roll call, roll, please.
Mr. Brady? Ms. Gaskin? Here. Ms. Lathrop? Here. Mr. Brindle?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Ms. Key? Here. Mr. Lau? That's 5 constitutes quorum.
The next is the consideration of the minutes from our July 22nd meeting, which was the work session.
We had a regular meeting that night, so we have 2 sets of minutes.
Yeah, okay. So,
You can do it as a single motion.
I'm sorry?
You can do it as a single motion.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion unless people have some comments on. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the minutes.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I don't see any citizens for citizens comments. Any plan commission members comments? The walking path on Valley Brook Drive is getting used more and more, and by bicyclists, I see. Actually, kids. It's amazing that kids now that are out riding bikes. Anything else? Okay. No continuances. No old business. So the new business is the Town of Cumberland Housing Review, HB 1001, requirements for the ordinances, and explore ways to increase housing development. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Ms. Owens.
Hopefully. Sorry, I had that. Oh, I've got it open 3 times now. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. So this is the audit we are required to do of our unified development ordinances. In our case, it's our zoning ordinance and subdivision control ordinance. That is required under the new HE 1001 from this year. And just a refresher on the requirements for this audit. There's kind of 9 primary things that the statute requires us to do as part of this audit and bring to light as part of the hearing. So providing for higher density development, constructing other housing types, including accessory dwelling units, manufactured and modular housing, adaptive reuse of commercial buildings for residential use, such as multifamily in commercial districts, increasing allowable floor area ratio for multifamily, waiving certain or eliminating certain regulations that have to do with garage sizes, roof pitch, minimum lot size, square footage, setbacks, parking, design standards. Reviewing our impact fee zones, streamlining or shortening the permitting processes and timelines, and then using property tax abatements to consider for higher density projects, as well as potential for donating land that's owned by the community, the town, for affordable housing development. So that's what we were charged to look at. As part of this process, you'll remember we talked about barriers to housing here in Cumberland. We've identified, utility availability as a big challenge in some areas, primarily with water. Land costs, community opposition to some of the housing options that get brought before us, regulatory timeframes, financing for the developments themselves, labor, capital costs, and then outdated zoning ordinances can also be a barrier. We talked a little bit about our community values as well, and making sure that we are providing options for all people in the community at no matter what stage of life they are at, so that housing diversity is something that's throughout our comprehensive plan is really a priority for us, and looking forward is something that we will continue to do. So the findings we kind of found in this audit, we kind of have 5 main findings here. Over the last 5 years, all our residential projects have come through as PUDs or planned unit developments. And so that does indicate to us that some of our standards may be outdated or inconsistent with what the market is currently bringing to us. None of these projects that were approved would be allowed in any of our R1 to R4 districts, which are single family districts. And then in the R5 and 6, where some of them would fit, single family is not a permitted use, so they wouldn't be permitted there as well. Residential uses are not permitted currently in commercial districts. Our middle housing districts are really the only districts that allow flexibility outside of a planned unit development. Those middle housing districts are more of a form-based standard, so they don't necessarily have some of the restrictions with lot size and density, and it also allows more typologies of housing in those districts than in some of our other categories. And then lastly, the typologies we have in our comp plan and our current zoning districts really don't line up either. So we do have some inconsistencies as we went through the ordinance. So we have several tables that we kind of created to compare things. This one compares really our uses, so you can see our agriculture district all the way to our multifamily, and the RM is our middle housing districts. So you can kind of see here, the X's is what's permitted in those districts. So outside of single family housing, which is allowed everywhere but in the R5 and 6, most of these other housing types, you need to be an R5, R6, RM1, RM2. So that just kind of illustrates one of the findings that we have there. And then the development standards, when you compare these, sorry, I'm touching the wrong spots. It doesn't like me. So this one compares our zoning ordinances against the projects that we've approved over the last 5 years. And so anything that's highlighted in yellow is a standard that would be consistent with what we've approved over the last 5 years. If it's not highlighted in yellow, we had no projects come in with that. So just another example of there's probably some inconsistencies that we're seeing with what the market is and what our ordinance says that are worth at least studying and analyzing in the future. So we're recommending some changes to processes. These will allow for our processes to be shorter time frames. That's one of the things that HE 1001 asks us to look at is, are there ways we can shorten the time frames for going through and approvals to get to permitting. And so we've talked about establishing a plat committee. This would be a group that would review your subdivision plats instead of them coming to the Plan Commission. it would have at least one plan commission member, and the plan commission makes the appointments to that committee. And this is something that we'll be bringing forward as a ordinance for you this fall for consideration. And then also expediting development plans. We currently require a public hearing, and it comes before plan commission. Those are not requirements of the code, they're options that they can be done that way. And so what we're recommending is making this approved by staff at the technical advisory committee level. So again, we can shorten timeframes by at least, 2 weeks this way, if not even a little bit more than that. And streamline things a little bit. Both of these processes are ministerial, meaning if they meet the code, they have to be approved, which is why we're bringing you these options, because there's really, if they meet the code, they have to be approved. So it makes sense to look at some of these other options that Indiana code allows us to consider. And so that's another one that will be coming back this fall as a potential ordinance for consideration to change. And then also with PUDs, there's some minor modifications that happen that we're recommending you allow to be permitted by staff, and that's something we'll bring to you probably closer to December for consideration when we're looking at incorporating ordinances for Indianapolis and Unigov. And it's just, there's some little situations where an internal road within a PUD changes, and it actually makes things better, but because of the way it changed, it actually triggers coming back to plan commission and a whole process. And we feel like some of those make sense to be like, yeah, that's so minor, staff can approve it and let it go to preliminary plat, which is where it gets seen by a committee the next time. So some things like that. And it would be spelled out in the ordinance what those items can be. So, as you know, the town has engaged with HWC to update our zoning and subdivision control ordinances. This year our focus is on Marion County and making sure our ordinances allow for the uses that we have there, so that we have some consistency and we're not creating legal non-conforming situations with the uses in their districts. And then next year, it will be a new zoning and subdivision control ordinance. And so we have several recommendations for things that be considered as part of that process. This does not mean we would change it. This just means it needs further study. And instead of trying to make a quick decision this year, we think that we're better off, since our comprehensive plan will be adopted this fall. We have a new process coming down the pike to look at all of our ordinances comprehensively. That's the time to really do this type of study, because it needs more than just a quick, does it create more housing analysis. So with that, for this year, like I said, the Unigov transition, one of the things that you're going to see in there some changes to the R5 and R6 districts that are going to be recommended, allowing single family uses, and then reducing some of the standards. And that's really so that we can use those classifications with our Marion County properties without having to create 10 new districts. With that too, if you remember the tables that were at the beginning, it also addresses some of those issues with allowing single family in those districts, so it'd be more consistent with some of the projects that we've been approving. So that's something that we think makes sense for this year. The rest of this is really stuff that we think needs much further analysis as part of the UDO update. And so that would be looking at minimum lot sizes and density. Right now we use minimum lot size. So we need to weigh our options. Maybe we need to consider density ranges for the districts versus minimum lot size. So just something for us to consider moving forward. Aligning our districts with our typologies. So as we're doing a new comprehensive plan, we're creating new classifications. Those typologies really should match our zoning districts. So this is our chance for the two documents to be talking. Your comp plan is your policy and your vision. Your ordinance is one of the tools we have to implement that vision. And so those should be talking to each other and align with each other. And then there's some, in our use matrix, we really need to study accessory dwelling units and looking at some of the different classifications and possibly allowing duplexes or triplexes in some of the other districts as well. And then when it comes to development standards, there's several development standards that I think need to be reviewed against the projects we've been approving and probably indicate there may need to be some modifications as we update the UDO next year. And then also looking at doing some considering density bonuses as a form of zoning relief when there's a mix of different typologies in the same block, within the same development, if they're using middle housing, things like that. So some of the things we really want to encourage, density bonuses are one tool we can use to encourage those types of things. Oops, there's more still, sorry. As part of the UDO process, we should just review our architectural standards and just make sure that they're appropriate for the community, for the market we're in, and what our community wants. So one of the things that we should really also look at is with our middle housing, we use form-based versus some of the other design-based. So there may be other locations where that form-based approach might make sense. So as we're doing our updates, I think we'll be looking at some options for hybrid ordinances where you have a mix of both, the traditional type of zoning and the form-based, depending on kind of location. But that takes a lot of time to study, and we don't want to make any quick decisions that, you know, could have negative impacts on the community, but definitely something we should definitely be looking at moving forward. And then just kind of considering impediments to higher density, middle housing, if those are things that zoning can address, can we change those? And then one of the things in our comp plan, we have a goal for having more creative neighborhoods and deterring those cookie cutter neighborhoods. So how do form standards, design standards, how can those be used to help us to not get the cookie cutter look, to be consistent with our comprehensive plan, but also make sure we're allowing for flexibility for housing to be constructed. So we don't want to be too strict, but we also want to make sure that we're getting the type of housing that the community wants. And then parking is another item we're asked to look at. So I think our multifamily and townhome standards may need to have some slight adjusting. And then also some considerations for mixed-use developments where we can mesh certain uses that make sense to each other, and then you may be able to allow some relief in minimum parking standards. So sometimes if you have commercial and residential, the times primarily like office and like multifamily, the times that they're there is usually the opposite, so they're great for nesting, and it's a great opportunity for reducing parking requirements in those types of situations, but it doesn't necessarily work in every situation. So that's really what we have found in our audit. We've identified there's a few quick things that we'll be bringing forth for consideration for changes yet this year. And then there's also other things that take more study that we're recommending that you look into next year. And there are copies of the slides if you would like them on the table.
Okay, I guess technically I have to open the public hearing. So I will do that. And there's no public here. So I guess unless somebody, they can't call in, so they can just watch. So I will close the public hearing. Then I'm assuming we can make some comments and questions, correct? I guess I'm just wondering, the state is trying to make more housing available for people. And it looks like it. And they want to be able to do it faster, which I guess is in theory cheaper. Yes. But I'm wondering, is there town slowing down the developers, really? I mean, it seems like, yeah, they have to, they have a lot of work to do when they, once they kind of get the general concept. I mean, they gotta figure out all the drainage, the piping, where all the electric goes and all that stuff. That takes a lot of time, but, I mean, we're not slowing them down. We have our engineering review those. I mean, that will still happen, correct? So I guess I'm wondering how much faster will things happen with what we're being proposed here?
Yeah, I think moving to a plat committee, moving development plans to administrative, I think you could be shaving anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks off of a project, depending on whether or not it's residential or commercial. So there definitely is a little bit of time savings there. And also you don't, we're not having meetings where the consultants and everybody have to be here, so there's a little bit of cost savings on some of that, or some of the, on our end as well. The reviews are still gonna happen, there's gonna be other meetings, so it may end up being a wash in the end, but I think if you ask the builders, they will say that the entitlement process slows them down. I can't speak for them, I've not been on that side of the table. But we've identified things we think that we can do to try to expedite things. But that's also gonna depend on the developers, the builders, and their design teams to have everything addressed and complete upon filing as they go through these processes.
And we'll be keeping track of that.
Yeah, so right now, for example,
Timeline standpoint.
yeah, and we're required to report on timing, how much time we're spending on projects and all these things as part of our annual reports. But if you think about it like a preliminary plat, sometimes you guys will approve it with conditions. By going to the plat committee, we're not gonna be doing as much of that. Because they're not gonna be able to get to the next step in a committee without fully satisfying things. So there's some trade-offs. Just like a development plan being administrative. Instead of it getting approved at plan commission with conditions, it's gonna keep going back to TAC until they get a final approval.
Yeah, those, the administrative ones, I think I can see, but I'm just a little concerned. I mean, is it gonna add more burden on you? I mean, you're gonna be doing the same reviews as you've always done, I guess.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll cut down a little bit on the paperwork you have to do to provide us.
Yeah, I think that's really, there's an extra 2 weeks built into our timeline for preparing for the meetings, staff reports, and things like that. So you're essentially losing that aspect of it. And that, in some cases, there's a little bit more, but for the most part, it tends to be that communication that happens there. But again, it's gonna put the onus on the applicants to have things well in order when they get to our TAC committee, and that isn't always the case.
So in your notes, said most projects fall into 6 to 9 month regulatory timeframes. You're saying by eliminating some of that, you shave off 4 to 6 weeks off of that 6 to 9 months. Is that going to be adequate?
That would be a question for the builders. The state asked us to look at trying to shave 15 days. So I think that what we're recommending kind of does do that.
I think that's pretty much all we can do.
When it comes to shortening timelines, it really is. And there's statutory requirements. If there's a public hearing required under statute, there is a set timeline that things have to work with under, and those are things we cannot change.
Yeah.
So this, like I said, there's a couple of weeks added in the process that this would, potentially shave off, but it's not significant.
Okay, how does our 6 to 9 months compare to other towns of equal size?
The timelines are statutory, so we all
6 to
pretty
9
much,
months.
it's the same. And a lot of it really depends on the developers and having things come before the plan commissions and making sure things are complete and one of the things, some of the larger communities or communities that are growing a little bit faster than us, their agendas are much fuller and oftentimes they can't get to everything. So there are some instances where you have some extra buildup just because of the caseload. So this also protects us in that situation because Planning Commission focuses on zoning, you have TAC doing development plan, and you have plats before a plat committee. So that will allow, and a lot of communities are moving in this same direction to do these same things.
So our 6 to 9 months is the same as any other town, city of our size.
It's all regulated by statute. So none, we're all held to those same timelines and it's not there's not a range. It's if they file here, you have to do this by this date and within 30 days you have to do this. So we have very tight timelines. If it were up to us and engineers, we'd love more time. I won't lie, but we work within what we have, and so we're looking at how do we shave off a little bit more.
So are there any towns or cities that are currently doing this well? And, from this new bill? That we
As far as,
that we could gather good real-time intel, like, hey, this is working, this is actually meeting the intent.
there are several communities across the state that do plat committees. Indianapolis does it. McCordsville is now doing plat committees. They've moved to that. You're starting to see more of it, so I think it's a little bit, I think in the communities like Indianapolis that have done it for a long time, it works. And again, their caseload is huge, so separating those things out makes a lot of sense. I think that in smaller communities, it's probably a little bit of, we're gonna find out. But theoretically, the processes should work well for us.
I mean, even aside from addition of the plat committee, is there anything else other towns are doing well that we could learn from without reinventing the wheel?
Yeah, we stay kind of plugged in with the planning community and what's being done. So from process standpoints, that's, you're kind of seeing the trend of what everybody's kind of looking at. When it comes to standards, we're seeing more communities looking at hybrid codes with form-based in certain areas where it makes sense, and then more of your traditional Euclidean use-based as you transition further back. A little bit more flexibility with uses. Some communities have gone to, you can have a single-family house everywhere. In other communities, there's, it's a little stricter. So there's still a variety of things there, but there's several states, across the country that are considered kind of ahead of the pack in planning when it comes to some of these things that are getting national attention right now that we can look at and see, has it worked, what hasn't, and kind of from there, kind of try to figure out what the right tools are for Cumberland. And that's really kind of where, we're trying to look at it through the lens of what our community is expecting of us. So yes, we have these state mandates and we will follow those. But we also have to look at what our community is expecting and what their values are and how do we merge those two. And so that's the ones we're trying to look through. And sometimes those things
Or are they even not mergeable?
we're gonna find out.
Okay, so it looks like these take, the plat committee and expedited DPRs and PUD amendments take the changes to our ordinances. How do we go about doing that?
Yes, so I've started drafting and TAP is gonna be getting those drafts later this week. So we will do some internal reviews on what that looks like from a statutory standpoint, as well as changes to our code. My hope would be to be bringing you the development plan and plat stuff possibly in September, but if not, October. October, you will see the changes to the zoning ordinance for, bringing in, becoming an included town. So you'll be seeing that coming in October. The comprehensive plan will be before you guys in September. So we have a lot of kind of moving pieces, which also makes it hard to make, some zoning ordinance changes because we're in the midst of a new comprehensive plan.
Do these also require public hearings then?
Yes, public hearings, notice will be published. And it'll go from the planning commission will make recommendations, ultimately the town council is the one who would adopt any changes.
To get like input on, are the developers notified of these kind of things since they are, I mean, this is gonna be impacting or affecting the way they do business?
So we put notice in the newspaper, and then on our website, there's information available. Our agendas are there, packets, all the traditional information.
I don't know if possibly there was the developers we have now, do something special, just sent to them to notify them.
We can,
I mean,
We
we've got
can.
3 or 4 different companies.
yeah. And I've
And
talked with some
you're
of them.
talking to them on a regular basis anyway, so.
Yeah, so I've talked to them a little bit about some of the process changes that we were contemplating in that, and so they seem, at least the idea of it was positive. When we get into it.
Would they not be though, builders, developers, would they not be astute to this? Because, I mean, it's passed down as a law, state law, and like, oh, look, this is really making to our benefit. So it's like, surely they followed it themselves, but you'd be able to look down and it's like, maybe it's like, this hand doesn't know what this hand's doing, which can happen, but, within its own company, but it's.
I think that this matter has a lot of attention across the state as well as the nation, that a lot of them are very familiar, and I fully believe that it's being tracked. We know our meetings. There are lots of people who go back and watch our meetings later. Some of them may or may not be builders, I don't know. But
Yeah, and they're probably used to, the tech committee, like that's Hancock County has done
yeah,
that
a lot.
for 20
Yeah.
years or more.
Now, when we make changes, will they complain about the process? I can't guarantee they won't.
Almost every developer that comes before us always is very pleased with our planning department. And we don't even slow, like, slow them down, we give them a lot of guidance and all that, so that's something that we need to be proud of.
We do our best, and we try to be in tune with their needs, and that, I can say that I have heard a couple of times where issues across the state have been discussed, and it has been pointed out that Cumberland is not necessarily, one of the communities doing those things. But we're all being looked at and asked to look at these things, and so we will. And we'll take it serious and
Does the council then, like, approve this report then? Does it then get sent to the state?
This will go to town council next week. We'll report it out just like we did here. And that they can take it under advisement, and then they're required, to submit our report and a copy of the minutes from the public hearing to the state.
Has anything filtered down yet? Are they still like the state? Just saying, okay, see how everybody comes together, what they need? Or is it already, you're getting a little information or feedback, or maybe you can't say? I'm trying to tread lightly here.
You're fine. I think it's a good question. I think, unfortunately, there's some communities that haven't dug into it the way we have already. And so in December, they're probably gonna be holding these hearings. We've been tracking this since the beginning and trying to how to go about this in a proactive way and do an analysis for you all that is fair and represents the community. And there's other communities that are doing that as well. I think you're gonna see, a wide variety of ways of how this gets handled, because it really, the list of the 9 things that we were to consider in holding a public hearing is the only guidance that we've been given. So I think what this looks like is probably different from one community to the next. And so we've tried to do it in a way that is user-friendly and most people can open up the document and be like, okay, this makes sense, or it doesn't make sense. And that, so I think we're all figuring it out. I'm hearing for the annual reporting that we will have to do, that end of this month, we're gonna get guidance on what that is going to look like and the sources we can use to pull that data from.
Well, I guess I would say go forth and prosper. And,
Yeah, we sit here, we don't have to do it.
and if you need any help, let me know. I'm not cruising till January, so.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Nikki and I are like, do you do events?
When it gets too cold, I can't fly my plane, so.
How are you with social media?
Not very good.
Right?
He keeps talking, right?
I mean, I've got a list. You offer to help, so.
That's right.
I guess we have what other business then? We have everything official, right?
Yes, the draft comp plan is on the website. We had an open house. We were at the BBB on Saturday with the booth and also Food Truck Friday, just so if you have a chance to go online, look at the draft, you can input your comments on the website as well.
So you say draft, I mean, we saw the draft about, 6 weeks ago or so, and someone was commenting. Has anything been added since then?
Yes,
Okay, that's what I didn't know if that.
yeah, so the version that's on the website, has taken those comments into consideration.
Okay.
So if you haven't looked at it in the last month, I would recommend going online, look at it again, and if your comments have not been addressed, put in a comment. You can either send me comments, or you can use their comment form. Each comment is like a separate submittal, the way they have it set up, and that, but I would recommend doing that.
I have a question now, because I found it very interesting. My phone does not like it, down here at the lake, so it's like, but anyway, so I kind of did a real fast thing on it when I got home today. But, okay, I had a question that, it was like this, all of a sudden it kept jumping out. This operative, this buzzword, should.
Comp plans are policy and
Yeah.
vision, so there's gonna be a lot of shoulds, not a lot of shall. Your zoning ordinance is where you have shall in there and must.
Okay.
Your policy document, your vision document, we're casting what we'd like to see.
The vision.
Yes, this is our
So we
vision,
should
this is
try
what we're
or-
trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Ordinance is one of the tools we have to implement, and so that's where your shalls
That's
and
what it was,
musts
yeah.
and have tos.
Yeah, it was just all of a sudden it was going, should. It just kind of interesting how it jumped out, but it was.
It's a great comment.
Good observation.
Yeah,
Pardon?
That's a good observation.
Oh, thank you.
and if you think about the types of cases that you hear, with a rezoning, it's does it pay, regard to the comprehensive plan, meaning is it consistent with? So again, it's not does it meet the comp plan, but does it generally line up with what we want to see there? That's the type of that just shows the type of difference. that we
So
do.
ordinance was saying, yep,
You must.
and this is already like we're doing.
We really want you
this,
to.
We really like this to happen. Should.
Yes.
I have a question, and I'm doing this because I don't know that if the company that we contracted with would know this answer. On under town services, under medical, it says the Hancock Gateway Park is located in Cumberland.
We pointed that out.
You what?
We pointed that out. Because it's not actually in Cumberland.
Okay. So that's been corrected or not?
We've identified it, but I would submit it as a comment as well.
Okay.
Or are you written it down?
I just don't want to make them mad.
No, that's what they're looking, I mean, that's what they're looking for, like, this is our this is where it's spelling, comma, like, everything.
Okay.
So yes, all those things, and we've looked at it so many times, we stop seeing some of those things. So if you're seeing something that you're like, what, that needs to be worded different, point it out.
Okay, and then I have one other thing, and I just want your thought on it, both of yours. So many people, like my constituents, some of them are just dead set against development. And I'm wondering if a little paragraph in here might talk about why a town would need to develop. You know, because what happens to a town that doesn't do anything, that goes stagnant? That way, and maybe references to where, you know, somebody could look that up or whatever. That way, when people, you know, start in, like, you can say, hey, you know,
Yeah, and they talk a little bit about why we do comprehensive planning, so that might be a good spot to kind of talk a little bit about, you know,
yeah, a lot of people just
why
don't
growth,
understand it.
why growth can be good.
Yeah, like when I explain it to people, and sometimes I reference some articles that I had saved, they're like, oh, okay, you know, like it calms them down,
Yeah.
you know, because,
Well, everybody feels like they're being infringed, and you have to say, you can't even drive up the road and all of a sudden it's closed, and your life is suddenly just
Right.
in chaos, just even driving on the road you normally do because of development or, let's say, progress.
Right.
So people are kind of being hit over the head a lot with progress,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a lot, in this area, it's growth.
It is.
And so it is, you do have to kind of say, I just remember when Anna said when we were looking at Rockbridge, she goes, well, it could be like, it could be worse, it could be a toxic dump or something, that which we wouldn't allow, but it was like, and Rockbridge has proved its point. It's turning out very nicely, but, yeah, it's just like, everybody has knee-jerk reactions, and it's like, how can we calmly say,
And it's hard too, because we've tried so many ways to get community input, and, community engagement is just hard these days. It's always been difficult, but it's really hard these days. And this is really the time for residents, even those folks that live near us, that are in our planning area, but not actually within the town, to help us to guide what that vision looks like. Because once we get to a public hearing for a rezoning, we're comparing it to the vision. That's not the time where we talk about, do we need more housing and that. And so oftentimes, you know, the concerns that they've raised really should be raised during the comprehensive plan. And it's really hard to get people to come out.
well, even the numbers that you have in the comprehensive plan about how you've reached out and all those incidences, the numbers still aren't that high. You know, and it is, it's like, and then people want to complain, but if you're given an opportunity, and, I mean, we've had it on our Valley Brooks Facebook page several times, thanks to Ted, and then Travis repeats it. But here's your chance, here's your chance, here's your chance.
Right.
And so it's, you know, it's not top priority until it's time to be their top priority.
I mean, and that's part of what makes your job hard, because you hear the community, you know, when those hearings are happening, but also knowing it's too late for some of those things.
yeah, so once this is adopted, then someone can, access it from our website?
Yeah, they will, and there will also be an interactive executive summary that's written in plain English, so that the average person can go to that executive summary and get the highlights and some of the maps, things like that,
Okay.
in a way that hopefully will be more, will be easier to understand than maybe some of the technical jargon that you get into in the other. And so that was one of the things we really liked about this firm, was that they use, anyway, the tools that they use to do some of these innovative things, and so, so we'll be doing that. Fort Wayne, has one, so if you look at Fort Wayne's comprehensive plan, their executive summary, the way that that's done, will have something comparable. It may not be formatted the same, those types of things, but that's the type of, document, that we'll have online that's interactive.
So,
I remember one of my comments was in some of the maps, and especially for these areas in here, were so condensed that you couldn't see anything. Is that been fixed, or so people can actually see more where the areas are?
I mean, on the size paper you're printing on, you're only gonna be able to see so well, but on computer screens,
Online, it's very clear.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, if you look at it on a computer, you can get it really big. And we will have all the GIS layers that they've created for all the maps. We'll have all of that, once this is done, that we can add into our system. Yeah, so for the maps, it really is easier to look at them online, because you can zoom in. And remember, the maps are guidance at this point too,
Right,
in the comp plan.
but it was kind of, I think it was, as I recall, showing here's what stuff is now, and so it's like, I can't see what's now because it's so smushed all together.
Yeah.
I kind of cheated. Paper copy, but.
And we do have a few more printed copies
Yeah, if you want
available
to.
if you are interested.
It's, I was like, really.
I like it.
Probably
I think it's
before our meeting next.
awesome. I think
If we could.
I'm really happy with who we hired to do it, and it's,
that's what I said, I thought it was very, very, very good job.
and plus I was around for our very first comp plan in 2000, the year 2000.
Turn your
I
third
shouldn't
one.
even be telling you. Big difference.
We've come a long way,
Yes,
a long way.
yes.
But I think, I think you're comparing apples and oranges, looking at 2000 and now, because we're in a very different place. The world's in a different place, technology's in a different place.
Yeah.
So, you know, what you had in 2000 is no different than what everybody else.
Right, and that's, so that's where we were at the time.
Absolutely. I mean, and when I came on board, you know, you guys, the community had really gone through that implementation plan, and you guys had checked almost every box off.
We did.
And that is amazing,
Yeah,
because
I
you
was
don't
really-
always see that.
Yeah, I was really
Mhm.
happy about that, and
And so, you know, with the last one that we did it in-house, and we've accomplished a lot of the things that we had in that plan as well, and some of the things we didn't, or just circumstances change and things like that. So, you know, that's one thing that I'm very proud of this community for, is because we don't let our plans sit on the shelf. We actually take that action, and that is not always the case.
Well, apples and oranges, you have a comprehensive plan that's very well put together, and, investigated and invested in. So you have this, which is our vision, but then we have now some mandates. So I was gonna say, does the comprehensive plan and how beautiful look at any points? Do we get any points for that?
I mean,
You're going,
yeah.
oh, look, this vision is amazing. Now the implementation.
I think yes, because we will have a current comprehensive plan. And so that's, you know, something that also is being looked at. When is the last time comp plans were updated? When's the last time ordinances were
and
updated?
it talks about some of the things.
It
that
does.
will be done.
Yeah, we're lucky because this has happened during our plan, so we're able to take a lot of this into consideration.
Yeah.
You know, other communities like McCordsville, they adopted theirs last year, and so they had just adopted the plan, and then this came out.
Yeah.
So, you have that as well. And then we'll be doing our ordinances next year, and we'll see where things lead next year, and be able to, have a really good, set of circumstances to influence where we end up, with things. So honestly, timing wise, it's frustrating, but also for us, given where we were at in our planning processes, it's lined up well for us. Because we were gonna be doing these things.
So I have a question just from a practical standpoint, you know, as I look at the growth areas on the comprehensive plan, you know, there's many little pockets there that aren't incorporated or annexed into the town. Practically speaking, how do you get that to happen? If that's part of our future,
That's
$1
a
question.
Right, that's a great question.
because these are built out, there's homes there, you know?
Yeah, so, there's two types of annexation that are allowed under Indiana code. One is, 100% property owner driven. Oftentimes we'll call that the super voluntary, meaning that all of the property owners have requested that annexation. It's an easy process, it's fairly quick. It's not usually contentious because they've asked for that annexation. The other one is what has become known as municipal led. We used to call them involuntary annexations. And it's pretty much everything that's not 100% property owner driven at this point. And those are 2-year processes, and they're pretty much set up that if there's any remonstrance within it, the municipality will lose. And it's very, I don't know if you guys have seen any, but the communities I communicate with, we're all like, we're not touching it.
And even
we
to the
will-
extent of, I think we would have to pay their legal
We
fees.
would have to pay their legal fee, yeah, there's a slew of things.
Yeah.
It's set up for us to lose, and so it's not worth,
Our legislators are not pro annexation.
well, it also, it's not in our best interest to start a fight with someone who doesn't want to be in the
Yeah, and
community.
that's.
So we focus on those super voluntary annexations, and so unfortunately, that means you're gonna have more donuts in the county.
So what is their incentive to be annexed?
Annex. Our services, so our parks, our planning, police protection, building department, public works, so they get our services instead of the county providing those services. They can have access to sanitary sewer. We have to provide that within 3 years to them, so if they have a failing septic, that sewer, we have to have it within 300 feet of their property within 3 years. There's things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the utilities as being an incentive. Those other things, they're gonna use the parks anyhow, regardless of whether they're part of the company. So like, is there a way with the utilities you can highly incentivize, not just saying you can tap in it at your own cost, but like, hey, if you guys all opt in, we're not only gonna run a main down the front of your property, we'll do your tie-in.
I mean, those are things that the utility board can consider. Traditionally, I think those are kind of one-off situations, and it's probably a really good economic development project, mostly because our utilities are not-for-profit, because they're government-owned, we're not allowed to have profit, and so there's not usually the margin to be able to just go and offer those types of incentives, whereas some private utilities can do things
I
like
just
that.
don't know how you'd ever incentivize people and not to all opt in
Yeah, so
otherwise.
that's why you see those donuts. If there's an existing neighborhood, more than likely they're gonna stay in the county. When we do a financial analysis, the fiscal is not gonna be, the tax revenue that comes in will not support the cost of services. So to do a municipally led annexation on existing homes just doesn't make sense because your fiscal's not gonna work from the beginning. And even if you could get that fiscal to work, then you have all these, you're automatically bringing in a population, there's the services you're providing. So most municipalities focus on the undeveloped land. And so then as those develop, and the developers would prefer to come in and work with municipalities.
So wasn't there something said about, making it automatic or something, that just little pockets here and there would have to be annexed? I remember hearing something, I don't know.
There's been some different annexation legislation looking at different things.
Okay, it's
But
just-
none of them have
none of them went
necessarily,
through, yeah.
they've not gone through, they've not done, so there's been lots of different conversations around. And honestly, annexation is one of the things that adds the most time often, to the undeveloped properties, timelines when it comes to the due diligence. If you think about next chapter, we had to do that in 3 phases. And it took a year to annex, and their approvals took 90 days. But they were stalled out over annexation, and that's something like we can't do anything about. So, and they couldn't move dirt until, annexation's complete.
But how did some of those little pockets occur? It's like on Buck Creek Road, they've got 2 houses that are on the west side of the road between Rock Ridge that are not. I mean, how do they get exempted? I mean,
They didn't want to be part of the town,
everything else around them is.
super voluntary annexation.
Okay. Back when those were developed and those houses were just there, I guess, at the time. or something.
Yeah, I mean, and just because involuntary annexations were allowed in the past, and you could do it, didn't mean communities chose to. And so I wasn't necessarily here for some of those, so I can't tell you what those conversations are. But I know in other communities where I've worked, just because you could do an involuntary didn't necessarily mean that was the right thing. You have to do that fiscal analysis and make sure that is gonna make sense. You have to evaluate the services and whether or not you can provide those. And do you want, does the goodwill with the neighbor mean more? So there's a lot of
A
considerations.
friend of mine is just buying a house there on 700, and I told you about, they asked if it was in Cumberland or not, and it's surrounded by all Cumberland, but there's 2 or 3, the houses right along 700 on the west side apparently are not.
So,
But the subdivision behind it is.
is it on a well and septic?
I don't know.
Hard to tell.
But,
There's some interesting ones, like, the houses in front of Glenoaks Village, Glenoaks.
yeah, that's the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah,
he's-
that puzzles me, how, why they weren't part of, but I wasn't here, so I
Yeah,
can't.
I would be really interested to know if they're on a well and septic. But,
Should be something in their front yard that indicates there's a well.
yeah.
That's
Well,
what
Because he's
shows
buying
up.
On Buck Creek Road, on the east side of the road, right by 40, there's those houses. And they typically flood a lot, and they are on a septic, for sure.
One just sold. The guy that had it moved into our neighborhood.
Really? Which house? For a second.
The mayor,
Oh, the little mayor's house? The one they had worked on and done,
Yeah.
all that work? Had a swimming pool.
When we moved in, this guy we called him the mayor, because he was always out just, paying attention to what was going on, and he sat in his front yard. He's since passed away, I believe. I think the 3rd owner's now right there. Okay, so I guess, next thing is you already told us about the agenda items for next month. Would be the comprehensive plan and then potentially some of these, amendments.
You also have, no, October's the reason.
All right, with that,
Yeah. And we anticipate meetings in September and October, possibly November. Hopefully not.
as long as Zoom works, I do it January, February, too. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Make a motion.
Do it.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Aye.